Well, hello everybody. My name's Clare McArdle. I'm going to give this presentation tonight on foundation skills. So bell control, listening skills and rope sight, these are the fundamental skills that are required in order for ringing to sound good. Not just that, they're essential skills to acquire to make progress towards your ringing goals, whether that's to ring methods, to ring the tenor behind, or to compete in a Devon chord change competition. There are additional skills required to achieve these aims, of course, such as sound knowledge of the theory and structure of what you're attempting to ring. But this presentation tonight is going to focus on the practical skills and how to acquire them. Time spent at this stage of your learners' ringing development will help them achieve their goals and manage their expectations. It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that ringing progression goes something like learn to handle a bell, rounds, chord changes, plain hunt. All too often, teachers are too eager to push their students to begin method ringing. Acquiring those essential foundation skills is forgotten about, and ringing chord changes is seen as a holding area for someone who's not quite ready to attempt plain hunt. I'm sure that doesn't apply to anyone here. However, I would like to use tonight's presentation to remind people of some of the resources that are available and why they're useful. So once our student has learnt to handle comfortably on their own, the next thing we do as teachers is throw them in at the deep end and ask them to ring in rounds. So what does that involve? Well, ringing rounds means having complete control of your bell to ring at the same speed as the other ringers in an evenly struck rhythm. Watch this clip. So it's all about timing and control. Do you want to see it again? It's very short. And what does the student find out? Well, at this point, the student finds out that they're not as skilled as they thought they were. This is probably closer to what happens. Sorry. So from the student's point of view, it's a bit like having the rug pulled out from under their feet and they're back to attempting something really difficult. In reality, it's the bell that's controlling what they do. They do have control, but they're only able to react to what they can feel as they ring each stroke. To ring in rounds, the ringer needs to judge how to pull the hand stroke and the backstroke in order to make it sound in the right place. Think about how long it's taken your student to learn to handle a bell in hours of one-to-one sessions. It's likely to take at least that long at the foundation skills stage for them to be in complete control. So, some bell control exercises. What's really important, make sure your students don't get stuck on one bell. Moving around the bells in the tower can be done right from the start, even when first teaching to handle. But it's really important to introduce variety, so your student has to make adjustments to the skills that they have by ringing different bells. Think of it as an investment. So hold, pull and stand in rounds and moving right. Or moving to the right so that you're not putting someone inexperienced on the treble straight after ringing the tenor. So that's just a little tip there. Be prepared for a little pep talk before the move from treble to tenor. So talk about the slower rotation of the heavier bell and the need to pull all the way through on both strokes. Watch points for this exercise. Did you hear rounds at hand stroke? Did you hear rounds at backstroke? And did everybody stand? On 6 bells, this could be completed in 6 goes, so 6 whole pulls. If the rounds was poor or somebody didn't set their bell, then, well, in my tower, we repeat the attempt before moving on. We keep a tally and look for improvement week on week. Hold, pull and stand with the tenor keeping going. This teaches timing as well as bell control. Everybody needs to be ready to pull off a whole pull later. And the watch points for this are making sure that everybody pulls off in the right place and that everybody's ready. Switcheroo. So this is forwards and backwards rounds on command, just in case anybody's not familiar with it. This exercise, you can make it more fun for children by letting them choose the command. So in 1 week, I had to shout sausages when I wanted when I wanted reverse rounds or that wanted the change to happen. With the watch points for switcheroo is that the back rounds make sure everybody allows space to follow a bell that is heavier. Also encourage anticipation. So when you're first starting out with this exercise, it's probably a good idea to tell everybody they need to look the other way just as the switch happens. Let the ringing settle before calling each switch, and set targets for improvement. So such as, well, we need the back rounds to settle a bit quicker. So moving on to some listening exercises. Turning to face the wall develops listening skills and ringing by rhythm. Now, we don't want everybody to turn and face the wall because that usually results in a bit of mayhem, really. So once you've got steady rounds, nominate one person to face outwards, so face the wall, and continue ringing rounds. And hopefully they'll get their, well, the aim is for them to get their striking in the right place. They're going to do this by listening. When they turn back, nominate somebody else and so on. And the challenge is for the band to maintain even striking. And this is one of a band exercise. And you can pick on some of the experienced ringers as well, just so that everybody gets a fair crack of the whip. The watch points for this, you might well need to allow people to practice actually physically turning around whilst they're ringing. And I would do this before, ringing in rounds, before the actual exercise. Give them a demonstration of how and when to turn, and also give them an opportunity to practice it on their own first, so that they're actually comfortable with doing this. I went on 2 slides, sorry. So another listening exercise is ringing rounds at opposite strokes. This is an exercise in leading and establishing rhythm, and it can be tricky for everybody to do this, especially if you've got some experienced ringers but they've actually never done this before. So it's quite good fun on a practice night for your mixed ability band. So your odd number bells are going to be ringing their hand strokes, and your even number bells ringing, well, starting at backstroke. So set all the even number bells at backstroke before you start, and then just pull off in rounds. That's easy, isn't it? So the aim is to get the rounds to sound right, but of course people can't do that by looking. They'll need to rely on listening to the bell in front of them as opposed to watching them, and also it helps them with the rhythm of rounds. For a bit of a variety, you can repeat the exercise with setting the odd number bells at backstroke and the even number bells at handstroke. So verbalising the row. Get your ringers to verbalise the row. So when you're first starting out with somebody who's just ringing in rounds, it's quite likely you're going to ring on fewer numbers than 6 or 8 or whatever. So, for example, ringing on 3. So that one's pretty easy. You've got 3 blind mice, haven't you? Most people have probably said that to their learners as they first ring it on 3 bells. But you can do it on make up sort of sentences for other numbers. So for 6, we've got the cat sat on the mat, although that does have 2 the's in, so 2 people would be the as their bell. So you get them to identify which is their word, and so they can identify which is their bell and where it falls in the sequence. So the other one that's quite good, one that Penny came up with, is we all like fish and chips, and that's quite a good one. And you can sort of like, as you're if you're getting people to listen to things, you can say, oh, well, I think the chips are a bit late, or that fish is early, or something like that. So inject a little bit of fun into it. Sorry, my presentation, I'm afraid, keeps jumping 2 slides when I turn it on, so that's why I'm flicking back, I'm afraid. Speed changes. So relative speed speeds on different numbers of bells is something that your students need to understand. It's all determined by the speed that the heaviest bell turns. So if it takes 3 seconds for the tenor to rotate and you're ringing on 8 bells, the bells will need to be spaced at intervals of 0.375 seconds. So that's easy, isn't it? I mean, I'm sure everybody can judge that. But the theory of it, of course, means that on 6, that interval will be ½ a second, and on 3, it will be 1 second. So practicing ringing on different numbers of bells helps people to adjust, well, in order for people to adjust their speed and their rhythm is a useful exercise. So one of the exercises, another exercise that that is on the resources is something called crash and gap. So ringing on just 3 bells with your student on the second, get them to ring a bit closer to the bell in front or ring closer to the bell behind, but then get them to actually adjust back to the right speed by listening. And so the spacing's even. Let's see what comes up on the next slide. Oh, good. I've got the right slide this time. So a couple of exercises in listening, leading, and adjusting speed. So fade out is one where your band starts by ringing rounds, and you can either fade out either from the front or from the back. So fading out from the front, the treble ringer will stand their bell, usually sort of on, well, as directed by whoever's conducting. After a few rounds, the conductor tells the second to stand because the second is now leading, and so then number 3 is leading, and then so on and so forth until only the tenor is ringing and is ringing by himself. If you want to do it the other way around and fade out from the back, the bells stand one at a time from the tenor forwards. Fading out, that doesn't sound quite as attractive as fading out at the front. And something like fading out at the front is something I've actually rung at for a funeral for people. So it's that diminishing number of bells with the bells getting slower and slower. But the advantage of fading out from the back is that not everybody has to be able to lead, whereas if you're fading out from the front, that they do. Fading in, so you can start this with 3 bells ringing rounds with your new ringer on the middle bell, checking that they're able to hear their bell, so they're getting the bell in the right place. And when you've got the rounds even, you add another bell in, so a bell on the end, so we can have a 4th bell. Every time the rounds settle, you can add in another bell until you get to the number of bells that you want, so up to 6. And each time you add a bell, you need to check that your ringer can still hear which one is theirs. So when your learner and the rest of your band are competent at both of these exercises, you can actually then combine the two by sort of fading out and then back in again. So you'd diminish the number of bells through from 6 down to just the tenor ringing, and then add them all in from the front. So you'd end up with 5, 6, 4, 5, 6, 3, 4, 5, 6, 2, 4, 3, 4, 5, 6, etc. So quite interesting exercises for your learners to do. So some resources for listening. The Tadhill website. This is quite a useful website, and it's got some. It's a sort of theory website, so it's not something that's done in the tower, but it's something that you can, your learner can take away as homework to go and investigate the Tadhill ringing website. It's a website that was created by Julian Back. It's a simple web app for learning change ringing methods. So you can use it for learning methods, but it also is for that sort of, there are listening exercises as well. So I did a presentation for the St Martin's Guild on how to use this site, and that can be found on the Guild's YouTube channel if you want to investigate it further. On one of the pages, though, you've got this is the listening exercises page. So this is a screenshot from the listening section, and it's an exercise to identify errors in striking. So errors can be at handstroke or backstroke. As you can see from the band in the middle, there are actually going to be 11 striking errors in this particular exercise. And the ringer can adjust using the arrows either forward or back, so making the bell strike earlier or later. The ringer can adjust from what they can hear. They need to identify which bell is making the striking error and get it to ring either a little bit closer or a little bit further away from the bell in front. And you have your it counts the number of adjustments made, so and your score. So if you get everything right, absolutely, your striking errors will be 0. That box will say 0. The adjustments made will be 11, and your score will be 11. But of course, your score might be, by the time it gets to 11, your score might actually be 15 if you didn't make the correct adjustments each time. So Art has a YouTube channel as well, which I'm sure lots of you are aware of. And there are plenty of instructional videos on using simulators on there. So especially ones on how to get started. So even if you don't know yourself, but your learner will be able to find out how to get themselves set up with a simulator. And all of these little YouTube videos have exercises that people can follow. So when it comes to teaching rope sight, there's lots of different exercises that you can use to get your student used to spotting who they're following. So I'm not really going to suggest anything for chord changes, except to make sure that your student understands how chord changes work. So when you're teaching chord changes, they need to understand that they need to know which bell they're following, which bell that one's following as well. So those are sort of essential rules for chord changes. And obviously that is the beginnings of rope sight. One little thing that I do when I first start teaching chord changes with a learner, when they're doing their very first chord change, I invariably will actually call them to move down the row. And that's mainly because the rope sight's a lot easier for them to do that. So basically they only have to look to the right to do it. So they're going to follow a bell that's 2 in front of them, and then they don't have to change the direction that they look to be able to follow the bell that they're when you move them back. So if they're ringing the 3rd and I call 2 to 3, they follow the 1, and you call 3 to 2 to get them back into the right place, and they're looking at number 2. So they haven't really got to move their field of vision just while they're first learning to move in a chord change. They can concentrate on the moving bit. So it's obviously your student needs to understand what they're looking for and why. Kaleidoscope exercises are useful building blocks for rope sight. You can start with simple ones like long places or short places for the student to get used to having to switch their focus from one bell to another and back, all whilst putting their own bell in the right place, of course. Making the exercises harder by making a pair of bells below the student's bell do something different, like dodging, for example. So if your student is making long places, they're following a different bell at handstroke and backstroke. You can also use kaleidoscope exercises to build skills for covering too. If you've got a method ringing band, you could consider something like Basso, Little Bob Doubles. So in this method, the treble plain hunts to seconds place and back. And so this is a good rope sight exercise for somebody who's more or less ready to, well, is hoping to be ready to move on to plain hunting on more than 2 bells, but each time they make seconds, they have to make seconds over a different bell. So that's where the rope sight thing comes in. they play home seconds place and back. For the rest of the band, though, I would say it's a little bit like playing bob doubles on speed, because it happens very quickly. You get all of the work of playing bob doubles except for that's making seconds, but there's no plain hunting in between. You just do each bit in each position. So you've got your 3/4 up, your long fifths, and your 3/4 down, and it comes round then. If you want, another way of ringing this is actually to get your student, the one who's ringing the treble, to actually make the second the treble, so that they start off by leading, and it gives them slight variation in rope sight, because they've obviously got to look out for the trebles. They've got to look both sides of them when they are looking out for which bell to follow, and this makes the start marginally easier for the rest of the band, because it then becomes a normal plain bob start. So you can see with the start with the treble as the treble, you start with the work, so the bells dodging start with their dodge, whereas if you make the second treble, 4 will run in and 3 will run out. So there are a variety of slow course methods too that people can ring, like these ones. So if you've got a band capable of ringing plain bob doubles and other doubles variations such as St Simon's and St Martin's, these ones are quite useful for somebody who's just trying to acquire some rope sight and the bell control to move their bell, but only to seconds place. So they're a bit like kaleidoscope exercises, really. They'll ring a sequence or a pattern, but the bells that they work with will change. So whereas if you're going to do long places in kaleidoscope, you're probably going to do them with either the bell next to you in one direction or next to you in the other direction. This one, people have they just have to identify which bell's coming down to the front. So in slapped and slow course, for example, the bell that comes in, fourth place bell comes in and does 4 blows lead and goes out again, dodging 3/4 on the way out. And the bell that is seconds place bell, after it's led, after making seconds over the treble, it makes 4 blows over the bell that's leading, then leads again and makes seconds over the treble. They can get more complicated, well, for the second ringer. So there's quite a few variations. So rugby slow course is another example of this. Having to find the bell that they work with obviously requires rope sight, but also knowing when to make seconds over the treble is another transferable skill for method ringing. And so that's more or less the end of, well, that is the end of my presentation. But I have, if anybody wants to take a screenshot here, I have got sort of references to all the things that I have referenced in the presentation. So there's references from the method ringing tool, the method toolboxes on the ART website. You've got the rounds toolbox, the cool change toolbox, and the kaleidoscope toolbox. So all of the exercises that I have I've highlighted here have come from those toolboxes. And there's the reference to the Tadhill website and also a few of the YouTube references, either from the ART channel or the one from the St Martin's Guild channel.